The SaltDipped Podcast, taking life, business, and adventure with just a pinch of salt. Welcome back to the next session of SaltDipped. This is a podcast where we discuss business, life, and everything in between, especially the flow between these two big parts of our lives. And I'm very, very happy today to have Fiona Coward with me. She is a body talk practitioner, and her business I've known for almost 8 years now, I think, Fee, and we've walked a lovely journey together, with Fee supporting me sometimes in my personal life as well as the business, and it's been absolutely brilliant. So Fee, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. You are our first non-marketing business who's joined me for an interview, and I'm very excited about that, because this is not supposed to be about what I talk about every single day. It's supposed to be
it's awesome to be here. And I think, there's so many overlapping elements to everything that we do. So it may not be marketing, but like any business, one has to market oneself. And so you kind of learn as you go. And I think from a body talk practitioner space, it's not marketing as a business, but it's something one has to market anyway. So I'm really glad to be chatting to you about this as well, because, from your expertise between yours and mine, and, and how we can best serve the people that are using our services.
Exactly that. And I think a big part, especially for your business, is marketing is education and explaining to people what it is that you do and what the story is behind it. So please share with me your business journey. How did you get into body talk, and where is business at today? What are you loving doing?
Sure. It's a long history to get to that point. And I was kind of thinking it's quite difficult to make it succinct, but I'll try and give you the potted version, because it does play into how I ended up in body talk. And so, if I think back, going all the way back to my school days, I was always keen on sport. Love sport. I think it's what got me through school. And then post-school, I worked for something, the National, the Olympic Committee and the Commonwealth Games Committee. I did my own sport, a lot of canoeing, so all the major rivers, sprint canoeing, marathon canoeing, underwater hockey. So there's that whole sort of water element, as you've spoken about. And then I got into endurance sports. I did adventure racing, and I did cycling and all of that. And then eventually that just came to a brick wall, literally. Almost overnight, my body started to shut down on me, and I started to get this incredible pain and inflammation, to the point where I had to make peace with not ever being able to exercise again. And so you can imagine, it is a complete loss of identity and a complete loss of self, and the grief that comes with something like that. And so I was sat with this, and it's also quite interesting to look back and realize how little I knew about the world around me and the environment around me, which I only started to understand once I got into body talk. And so it was in searching for answers as to what was going on, because the medical profession wasn't really able to help me. And I really didn't want to go on heavy duty drugs or anything like that, because the side effects were so much worse than what they may have helped. And it was in that search that I came across a body talk practitioner. And it's, those light bulb moments where it's just like, this is something I want to do. It's something new. It was extremely hard to kind of get myself to do the studying, do all the courses and all of that, because I was in such pain and just struggling with just day-to-day stuff. But I'm so grateful for that, because that's what provided the turnaround. And it was in one of those sessions that I got that light bulb moment that I realized, okay, this is what I need to shift and change. And from that moment, I started crawling my way back to health. And over the years, so again, it's about 8 years now, it's just turned my life around. But it's also so fascinating for me, because I simply didn't know any better. And it's only through this introspection and this understanding of how I need to be so careful about the environment in which I place myself that I've kind of managed to heal myself to the point where I'm now back and I can call myself an athlete again. And I'm doing sport and I'm doing ultra distance cycling again. And so that journey has been quite profound, and I lay it all at the feet of body talk, because it was the tool that enabled me to do the self-discovery and to bring about the healing on a physical level.
Yeah. And I mean, like you say, I was going to say, not even just an athlete, you're doing these epic events, which I mean must be really grueling on the body, and they're days long, they're off road, so you're able to put yourself in very challenging conditions again, from going from thinking, oh, I'll never be able to exercise, to that is huge improvement. I mean,
Yeah.
if that
And I mean,
is
when we first
testament
met,
to
I
how
think
this
you
works.
probably recall how I struggled to go up and down stairs. And, and all of that was just a huge effort, and it was just constant pain and, and just trying to show up for myself. But as I say, the gratitude that I have for my journey is intense, because it's been such a learning curve, and it's been so important for me to walk the talk of body talk. And so, I don't want to become a zealot, but I am so passionate about it because I know how it helps me. And the physical healing came about because I did the inner work, and I did the
Yes.
spiritual healing and the emotional healing and all of those elements, which are integral to why we get ill in the first place.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad you mentioned that as well, because I just hearing you talk is, one of the things that really sort of stands out is the mental strength that you need to have to be able to go through such an ordeal, and especially if you love your exercise. Like, I've got a bit of a cold at the moment, and I haven't done anything since last Friday, and I am itching, and I wanted to go
Yeah.
swimming on Tuesday, and I wanted to do yoga, but my body is telling me no, and I'm so frustrated.
Yeah.
So and that's just the cold. Never mind, like you say, this brick wall that you've hit. What did you find? Where was that mental switch with? I mean, what did that feel like, having to go? This is a new reality. I now need to adapt to it, and not just once. You've had to do it again as well. Instead of going, hold on, this isn't the reality now. I can actually make a difference. It's amazing that you've been able to do that twice.
Yeah, it was interesting because it required a bit of space. So it was around 2017 that I kind of got the breakthrough and understanding that I needed to contain myself in my energies. And because if I didn't keep my energies within me, my body had nothing, no resources to be able to heal itself. And being the kind of person that I am, and you often find this with people in the sort of healing spaces, that you givers and you give to people and you put yourself out there, and it's just what you do. But what I came to realize is that my spirit, if you want to call it that, my heart, does not want to be in spaces where there is a lot of anger and there's a lot of toxicity, there's a lot of resentment. And that was the space that I'd been in. And I didn't realize what effect it was having on me. I was just doing my best to, manage the situation, be present, be supportive, and all of those things as well. So extracting myself from a situation like that was so eye-opening, because again my healing started to accelerate, because my body wasn't just losing the coherence that it needed for healing. It was managing to then pull everything together and manage the resources. And so I think also when you're in this sort of space, you have to be so careful about latching onto other people's energies or absorbing other people's emotions, because that also crushes you. And
Mm.
we don't know that we're doing that. I certainly didn't. And it's again, it's now working my way through that, and then getting they aha moments, but they're so fundamental in understanding who I am and what I need, and how I need to, what brings me joy and what brings me alignment within me. Because when that happens, then everything else flows and everything starts to come to me with ease. I move through life with greater ease because I am aligned with who I really am, and within myself. And so that's the thing that I like to bring to people, is that understanding of who they really are, because we all are products of our experiences. We're products of what people have told us, how people have behaved towards us. We're products of words, we're products of actions, and it puts a layer between reality and beliefs about who we are. And so many of my clients come to me because they just know there's more to them, and they know there's another layer there, and it's a journey which is so sacred, in my opinion, of who am I, and not who I believe I am, not who I think I am, but who am I really. And it's that journey that is so courageous but so powerful, because it brings us, I think, to the point of being human. And The journey of being human is to understand who you are. And when you do that, the flow around you and the influence around you that you have is so much higher and so much more positive and so much more uplifting for all of those around you. But unfortunately, you don't know that. You don't know that you have that capacity unless you consciously go on the journey of seeking.
Yeah, and connecting with it. And I think, yeah, when I first came to you, it's such a different experience. And like you say, you know that there's something else. You want to sort of untap it, but you don't necessarily know when you're stepping into that first session what to expect, how your body's going to react. I suppose there's also maybe a bit of hesitation sometimes as to how much are you as the practitioner going to be able to pick up, how much talking do I have to do, is it like a counseling session, all of those things. And it's quite different in that it's a fairly silent session in compared to counseling. You don't do a lot of talking. It's more what you're discovering as the practitioner and unpacking with the person. Maybe talk us through, what does a typical first session look like with the clients? Let's break down some barriers and understanding of what people could expect if they did come and work.
Yeah, it is, because it is difficult for people to grasp. And I think the fundamental strength of body talk is that it's body led. So there's no specific agenda like I have a problem with my relationship, or I'm struggling with money issues, or I just feel lost, and all of those things as well. So a person arrives with some of them don't, but they arrive with an inkling of what they're struggling with. But because it's body led and there isn't an agenda per se in that you must do this and then we're going to talk about this and then we're going to talk about this, we tap into an inner wisdom that every single person on this planet has. And their body holds that wisdom, and it is enabling that connection to your own body to understand more about who you are. So in a typical session, people would arrive and they might say, okay, I'm just struggling with anger. And so we will hold that in the space, but the body knows what it needs to prioritize. So my role is to interpret the body's messages, and my role is to be completely present and to understand and put into words that are meaningful to the client what the body is trying to convey to them. So in my instance with the living in an angry environment, my body was just giving me pain until it just said, you can't stay here anymore. So mine was quite dramatic in that respect, but I would never, ever have realized that had I not had this insight into what my body was trying to tell me. And so in that session, we will follow the prompts of the body, which can be very in-depth and can be very profound, and bring it to the surface. Because when it's brought to the surface, people become aware. And when you're aware, you become empowered and you can make those changes. And at the same time, we release the hold that the emotions or the beliefs have on you, because it's this way of releasing it from the body so that you begin to free yourself from the pattern that you've been stuck in. And again, it comes back to this being empowered to understand, oh, okay, I get it. So when that happens, I know what's going on, and so I can adapt and change. And over time, you can completely reshift person that you are into something that's more authentic, somebody who is more regulated, perhaps emotionally, somebody who is more in tune with themselves, and through just these incredible insights that you get into the nature of your
Yeah, and I think there's so much of that that's powerful. Like you say, you remove the energy, what's keeping you stuck, but you're almost transferring the knowledge from the body to the head. So that, like you say, that awareness, and which then allows the patterns to change going forward.
Yeah, 100%. And it's one of my favorite phrases is we've got to start thinking our way through stuff, and we've got to get into feeling our way through things. And if we can get the mind and the body in sync, that is incredibly powerful. But society at the moment doesn't reward feelings, intuitions, it rewards intellect. And so we make lists and pros and cons instead of sort of saying, okay, there are the pros and cons. What feels right about this decision or this direction? And that's part of where we start to get to, where you start to connect again to that wisdom. So you can call it intuition, you can call it wisdom, but it's there and it's accessible. And this is a way in which people reach that. And I'm going to have to cough now. Excuse me, had this chest.
Don't worry, I woke up this morning and it's all here in my chest as well, so I completely understand. I'll cut all of this out. We don't need to worry about it. Good. Okay, so where do I want to go from there? Right. Yes. So with that, I've always found it really interesting. Like from going from an individual person as well, you can then also work on groups of people or organizations. And I'm talking specifically about businesses. I mean, there's been times where I've dropped you a message and said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to be out of contact a little bit with my business for the next 2 weeks. Can we do something just to help the energy of the team and all of that?" That must be a little bit different and quite interesting as well.
It's endlessly fascinating because, in essence, what you're doing is you're looking at the emotional climate in a business. And because it's people, there's always going to be a tangle of emotions and energies, and it's the energy that the business owner brings into the business. It's what the clients bring in, the customers, the staff, and all of that as well. And the success of a business depends so much on the energy flow within the business itself. So you could have energy that's sitting there more apathetic and people aren't really buying into where the business is going and they're moving forward and being inspired by the business owner. Or you might have one bad apple in a business which impacts so quickly on the rest of the people and the staff. So when we understand what's going on below the surface, that sort of unseen, and let's use the word ocean of stuff, within an ocean, you've got all of these things that exist and live within it, but it's still one ocean. And it's the same thing with a business. It's one business with a whole lot of people bringing themselves to that business. And when a business owner understands what's going on, it's information. It's information that they can use to move things forward or to have conversations or to reflect a little bit on how they can tweak or change the way they approach things within the business. So there's a lot of subtleties that happen, and business owners often struggle with, why is this not moving forward? Why am I not able to get the people productive in the way that I want? There's ways and means in which you can shift that, but it's kind of understanding, what is going on. Is there a residual energy from staff members who have left that are still connected into the business? Are there people who are very dominant but are stuck in a bit of a time warp in the business, and they like the way the business used to be and they're not buying into shifting forward, and they unconsciously are just throwing out that anchor? And you don't know that because you don't have that insight into what's going on at that level. So the business is endlessly fascinating because you haven't got a human being to talk to and to answer you back and to give you feedback. But it's also is incredibly rewarding when things kind of make sense and you're sort of working with this and something jumps into your mind and you just know that this is an essential part of what's going on in the business, and then putting it into words for the business owner so that they can appreciate exactly that and understand it and then be able to take action on it.
And I think, I can definitely speak to that because when we've done individual sessions, like you say, this is it. Is that what you're experiencing? And you can sort of connect it and we can have a chat about it and then go, okay, what next? But at the same time, if I think about the session that we did towards the end of last year on the business, we'd gone through a lot of change and growth. I hadn't had a chance to catch up with you about what was going on in the business at all. And getting your feedback was really interesting because, everything for me rang true. Like it was things like, because we'd had shift inside of leadership positions, and I don't think I'd even spoken to you much about it, but you were talking about, things settling into place and the people were now going to be able to step up into their new positions, especially with me being a little bit offline and in Australia, different time zones from South Africa, which was what was causing my concern. And it was really interesting hearing that feedback. So even though, like you say, the business can't speak back to you, but you can pick up so much from the energies remotely as well. Because it's not like you sat with us, you didn't talk to any of our team. It was you tapping into the business with permission and finding out what was there. I find it fascinating. It really is amazing what you can do when you can read energy.
Yeah, because often I think it's so unintentional, what business owners bring. So, for example, I remember one client, it was very much about, they were focusing on the 20% of negative clients without realizing, but hold on, 80% of my clients are fantastic. And these are the people we should celebrate. And these are we as a business need to remember that we are doing a fantastic job. And all of these people are good clients for us. They're appreciative of the work that we do, but all we ever do is focus on the bad 20%. And that then puts this huge stress energy into the business and this negativity into the business, which is completely not the way the business is. And so from that, when you understand, well, it's only 20% and maybe I don't need that 20%, I'd rather concentrate on the 80% and just bring in more of those type of clients. That's where the empowerment comes to a business owner, is understanding where the dynamics could be shifted and changed when they perceive things somewhat differently.
Definitely. For 2026, what is your flow and focus for the year? What do you want more of? What do those 80% of clients look like for you?
I think that, I love working with humans, obviously, because people are so endlessly fascinating, and to see people become empowered and take back control over their life is incredibly rewarding. I think 2026 is potentially going to grow more on the business side of things, the looking at the emotional climate within businesses and rebalancing that and giving business owners that level of insight. So I'm hoping that, and it was interesting, I did a bit of an exercise to see how much of what proportion of my work that is. And it's probably about 20% of my work that I'm doing now. And I would like to see that grow a lot more, because if your business is in cohesion or coherent, and your business is aligned, and the energies within the business are aligned, it means you're going to be more successful potentially, and your people who are working for you are going to enjoy working much more, and that just means your business can become more sustainable over time. So it's another way of supporting people in a way that perhaps is a little challenging for them to grasp. But I think that's an area in which 2026 can grow for me. And I think also just working more with people, especially at the moment, because the world is so crazy and so angry and so frightening. But if I can help people become anchored into who they are, their particular journey, and to feel and not become overwhelmed with all the external emotions, then I think that would be something major to achieve in this year.
I think that's a very good point. There's a couple of people who've said to me that 2026 feels so similar to the beginning of 2020. And I understand where they're coming from. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of uncertainty. And it's interesting for me to see some of the people who struggled in 2020 seem quite confident at the moment. So they've obviously gone through a bit of a change journey, and like you said, they've anchored themselves in. But some people are still sitting in the same space. They're reacting similarly, or almost. Actually, and a couple of people I know, I think that fear, like you're saying, is anchored in the body, and it's coming up again rather than being it is a new reality. It's similar, but big challenge.
Because it's global. Yeah. And that's, so the power of those emotions is overwhelming. And, so there's a lot of hatred out there, and there's a lot of anger and frustration and all of that as well. And it's just ramped up because of the scale at which things are happening. And so it's very difficult for us to protect our own integrity and our own space under this sort of cloud that's going on. And I think, just to clear that overwhelm is something so simple and easy to do. And I hope that people will tap into that so that they feel that they're coping better, so that they radiate out more confidence and more calm to the people in their space.
Coming from the social media side, it's been interesting to see how many people keep saying, I'm so done living through historical events. Can we stop now? And I had a thought about that sentence, and I realized, but every person who's ever lived has lived through some sort of a historic event. It kind of is just something we have to get on and do and handle and move forward with, really.
Yeah, because you can't ignore it these days, can you?
No, it's in your face. Whereas like 1600s England, you wouldn't know what was happening at the other side of the world, which probably did have its benefits as well. If people want to book a session with you or contact you for more information, where can they get hold of you?
Via Facebook, The Paradigm Shift, and obviously on my website also, theparadigmshift.co.za, where there is book now buttons. very happy to just chat to people and tell them a little bit more via WhatsApp. And always open to just talk to people and just give them more insight into what I do, how it can work for them, and take it from there.
Fantastic. I'm going to include Fee's links in the description on YouTube, so if you want to go and have a click on them and have a further chat with her, you're more than welcome to. Fee, thank you so much for sharing with me today. It's been brilliant chatting to you and getting to understand more about body talk and how this works and how people can really easily bring it into their own lives.
Yeah, this has been awesome. It's lovely to talk about it, and also to talk with you who have experienced it and understand a little bit more of this weird thing called body talk.